Hi, welcome to another edition of our LinkedIn Q&A. Thank you so much for sending in all your great questions. Let's try and get through as many as we can. Kicking off with Hannah, who had a question about trying to find a new job and the focus on young people. Well, Hannah, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear about your redundancy. Obviously, it's a very difficult time for a lot of people. And you're right, we have put a lot of focus into supporting young people find employment. And that's because all the evidence, the research and experience tells us that they're the ones that are the most impacted by a situation like this, because it has such a long-term impact on their life chances if they lose connection with the labour market and are not in a job early on in their careers. But we are doing lots of things for others as well, and particularly for people in your situation. Obviously, recently I announced the Job Support Scheme, which is a scheme that allows the government to help subsidise the wages of people who are on part-time hours. But beyond that, there are a few other things. We've put a lot of extra investment into the Department for Work and Pensions so they can increase the number of their staff who work intensively with people who have lost their job and help them find new opportunities. We've also provided quite significant cash incentives for businesses to take on new apprentices at all different age categories, which is something that we haven't really done like that in the past. And then lastly, you might have seen the Prime Minister's speech earlier this week, which broadened the availability of skills provision to adults, especially if they've lost their job. But look, in the long term, the best way for us to create new jobs for people is to get as much of the economy going again as possible. That's our focus. And in the meantime, I'd say to you, remain hopeful. Next, we've got a question from Gordon talking about the arts and cultural sector and the support we've provided. You know, Gordon, funnily enough, last night when I got home and turned on the TV, I was watching, I think it was from the Royal Albert Hall performance of Phantom and the Opera, which was on TV from some time ago. And it really reminded me, I'm a massive musicals fan, it really reminded me of the joy of being at a live event in the theatre. But whether that's, for me, it's entertainment, for many people, perhaps like you who work in that industry, that's your livelihood. And I know this period has been very difficult on many like you. There's a couple of things that I'd point you to. One is our self-employment scheme, which has benefited many people who are self-employed who work in this sector. And I announced the other week an extension of the grant payments in that scheme to match what we're doing on the job support side. Hopefully that's something that will benefit many. But also, we earlier on in this crisis recognised the threat to our theatres, and especially all our local cultural institutions, which are important to communities around the country. And we announced a package of support worth £1.5 billion, larger and more significant than I think pretty much what any other country has done. And hopefully that will mean we can preserve our really vital cultural capital through this pandemic. But I'm not going to pretend that it's not a very difficult time. And I think we all want to kind of suppress this virus and get our lives back to normal. And part of that is being able to have the joy of watching people like you and all the people around you in your industry put on the most amazing performances for all of us. Right, next, I think Malti had a question about support available to people who are unemployed longer than 6 months, and how does that work? I think, Malti, what I'd say is, if I've understood your question right, you can actually access universal credit for longer than 6 months, depending on particular circumstances. So that support is actually there. And to your broader question of those who've been out of work for a while, now, DWP, the Department for Work and Pensions, have said that they are working on a new programme to really intensively help those who are long-term unemployed. We've had versions of that programme in the past, something called the Work Programme, and we're actively looking at what a version of that might be that we could put in place. DWP are looking to introduce that in time, and that will provide that intensive support to find new opportunities for those who have been unemployed for a long time. So stay tuned. Right, next we've got a question from Mark about support for apprentices and some of the employment work that he's been doing. Some of our schemes seem to have worked for him. Mark, that's fantastic. I'm so delighted that the extra incentives we've given on traineeships have been so helpful to you in your area and your local colleges. Hopefully I can come and maybe see them at some point. That would be great. And you're right about the importance of apprenticeships. Skills training is vital, and we know that it's better if people have that training attached to a job in a workplace rather than just sitting in a classroom classroom, and apprenticeships are the best way of doing that. And that's why we've provided cash bonuses for businesses to take on new apprentices, £1,500 for older apprentices and £2,000 for younger apprentices, and a lot of support for the training costs. For those apprentices who are made redundant, you're right, that can happen. I can't rule that out, and given the labour market we're in, that's definitely possible. We've set up a new scheme recently to provide support specifically to and advice to apprentices who have been made redundant, so hopefully that will help. And also they're eligible for the bonus if they find a new opportunity. So I think both of those things should help with your particular question, but delighted that the support we've put in place is making a difference on the ground. That's really nice to hear. All right, next we've got a question from Gay about focus of support for micro businesses and new startups. Well, that's absolutely spot on, Gabe. This has always been a brilliant country to start and grow a brand new business. Part of my background is investing in some of those companies, so it's something I feel quite passionately about. For people in that industry, I think you talked about self-employed people as well. There's obviously the self-employed support scheme, which is benefiting somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million people at the moment. So hopefully that's been of help to the really micro traders, the micro businesses. But to support startups, I created something called the Future Fund. And this has proved to be really, well, it's been welcomed by the industry and I think has made a big difference. We've had 700 companies that have accessed the Future Fund, and what that does is provide a government matched amount of funding if the company is raising private funding, either startup funding from small seed amounts all the way up to £5 million. We have a standardized convertible loan instrument. You'll be familiar with that if you're in the startup world, and it's been welcomed and I think now imitated by some other countries around the world. But you're right that we need the dynamism and entrepreneurship and creativity of all our startups and small companies to remain throughout this crisis and then help us grow our way out of it on the other end. Right, next we've got a question from Darren and our stamp duty cut and the housing market. Well, Darren, I'm sorry, I can't comment on future tax policy, which you'll forgive me for, but thank you for highlighting the importance of the stamp duty cut. And I think it's done what it was designed to do. It's a temporary cut, and the reason it's temporary is that brings forward activity from the future to now, and that's good, and we're seeing that because housing transactions and viewings and mortgage approvals are all rising, which is good. But it's important to take a step back. Why do we do that? It's great to help people get a step on the housing ladder and reduce the cost of doing that. So that's a good thing. But also we did it to help support and create jobs. There are many people employed in and around the housing sector. And by having all this activity, that means that we can protect and potentially create jobs in that sector, and that's what I think we're seeing. We know that when people move house, for example, they tend to spend on average about 5% of the value on the house on lots of things to do with doing it up and improving it, and all of that is helpful in supporting economic activity in the economy and protecting jobs. So I'm glad that it's working, and I hope you and others can take advantage of it if you're in the market for a new house at the moment. Right, next we've got a question from Dan asking about state aid for technology and supporting new and growing companies and the amount of money we've been spending on everything. So, look, a couple of things, Dan. First of all, look, we have spent a lot this year, and we've had to borrow a lot to do that. I believe that was the right thing to do, and the situation would have been far worse if we hadn't done that, to try and protect as many jobs and businesses as possible. Obviously, that level of support can't go on forever. Our public finances are important, and it's worth remembering I've been able to act in this way because we came into this crisis with a strong set of public finances where borrowing was under control, debt was falling. These were important things that enabled me to take the steps that I have, and we want to make sure that who knows when the next crisis will hit us, that we're well prepared for that fiscally, and that's why it's important to focus our attention on repairing the public finances whilst continuing to provide support where we can. I mean, to your other question, I don't have a particular percentage in mind when we think about trying to support this company or sector than another. I can broadly believe that the market economy is probably better at figuring out than I am sitting in this office. And with regard to state aid, now this is obviously a kind of long topic in and of itself. I'm slightly cautious about the government's ability, certainly my ability to sit here and pick the precise winners. We want to create an environment where successful companies can thrive, in particular technology companies, as you mentioned. And a lot about that is the financing environment, the regulatory environment, etc., which I keep an eye on. But the other thing I'd highlight there is we've always been a country that's open to foreign investment, and that's broadly been very good for us. It's driven up productivity. It's part of what makes our economy dynamic. But we really need to be eyes wide open because sadly, in the world in which we're living, there are hostile state actors that come to invest or try and extract technology out of the UK or indeed jobs. And we need to be eyes wide open about that threat and make sure we're able to protect ourselves against those who are investing here with slightly more hostile intentions. And that's what we're doing, and we're tightening up all our rules and laws around that to give us greater power to intervene if we think necessary. Now, right, next we've got Paul talking about no bottomless pit of the money, but why not extend the furlough scheme? Well, Paul, this has been one of the harder decisions that I've had to make. I believe it's the right one. Now, the furlough scheme was the right intervention at the start of this crisis when we're in an acute period of disruption. The entire economy was shut down and 9 million jobs were protected through it. I don't think it's neither sustainable nor right to carry on that type of scheme, given we're now in a situation where the economy is opening up and we're recovering. There isn't a bottomless pit of money, as you said, and the scheme is exceptionally expensive. But also, it's just the wrong thing for people to be sitting at home, not doing anything for a very prolonged period of time. That's not good for them. It's not good for their futures. And at some point, we need to recognise that this virus is going to be a fact of our life for a while, and part of that, if someone's job is not going to be there for them to come back to, is not always going to be the case. It can't save every single job. We want to focus on finding people new opportunities to look forward to, and that's exactly what we've been doing, and we've been talking about that in some of the earlier questions. And now it would be an easy thing to say, sure, we'll just carry on paying everyone's wages while they're at home forever and a day, but I don't think that would be honest or indeed responsible. But that doesn't mean that we haven't stopped supporting people, and whether the announcements I made just a week ago about the new job support scheme, the various other things we've been talking about in this Q&A, hopefully provide you and everyone with reassurance that we're still doing what we can to support the economy through a very difficult period, try and protect as many people's jobs as possible, but recognising that the nature of that support has to evolve. It has to be more targeted, and we're going to need to have to adjust to the virus being a fact of our lives for a while. But bit by bit, I'm confident we will get through this and get things back to normal in time. Right, next we've got a question from Benjamin on the shape of the recovery. Well, Benjamin, the truth is we don't know. I mean, this is a time of unprecedented economic uncertainty, as most commentators would tell you. I try to prepare for the worst and hope for the best would probably be my guiding principle in all these things. We know we're going to have to support the economy for a while to come, and so the nature of that support is going to be evolving as we come out of this and the economy starts to grow again, which it has been doing in the last couple of months. But I think what you need to hear from me and my approach to this is that I'm going to constantly react to what is happening and changing on the ground. This is not a situation which we had a playbook for. As I said, it's an unprecedented situation, and what I'm going to try and do is make sure that my responses are targeted and they're timely. They deal with the situation as it's evolving, and it's incumbent upon me to continually be, I think, agile and creative with our response. Hopefully that's what you will see, that's what we've been trying to do, and that attitude will remain very much my approach to this as we carry on going through it through the winter. A question from Isla about the events management industry and bounce back loans. Yes, Isla. Look, I'm absolutely under no illusions about how difficult this period is for you and for businesses like yours. I know I know you want nothing more than just to be able to be open and to operate and do what you do best, and I would absolutely love for that to be the case, but it would be wrong for me to sit here and tell you I know exactly when that's going to be possible, given how this virus is progressing and the approach we're taking to suppress it. So first of all, my sympathies are with you for the situation you've been in. On some more kind of specific things, on the bounce back loan, I'm glad that it sounds like you've been able to get one of those. Last week I announced some quite major changes to that loan program, which hopefully will help you. You'll remember these were meant to be 6-year loans. We've negotiated a standard offer now where for the million small businesses like yours that have taken these loans, those loans can automatically be extended to be 10-year loans. And what that does is reduce the monthly repayment by almost half. So that should be quite a significant cash saving to your businesses and many others. We've also organised for interest-only repayment periods, and indeed full holidays for 6 months down the line. None of those options will impact your credit rating if you take them up in advance of the payments becoming due. And remember that there's no payments at all for the first year. That's something that we put in place in that loan in the first instance. So hopefully all those things are helpful. And then you also talked about your business adapting, which is great to hear, and that's what we need. And we need all our innovative entrepreneurial companies like yours to adapt to new circumstances, and the job support scheme should help with that, because what that scheme does is provide a government top up to people's wages shared with an employer for people who are working less than their normal amount of time. So as your business evolves to a slightly different model, new types of business, and it's taking time to ramp up, the job support scheme should help support your employees' wages, help you with the bills as you make that transition. But I know that doesn't solve your fundamental problem. We were all looking forward to a time when you can go back to doing what I know you want to do, which is running events. But hopefully these practical things will help in the short term. Right, and I think that brings us to the end. Well, thanks very much for everyone's time and questions. We covered a lot of topics, and in general what I'd say is, all of you running small businesses, thank you for everything you're doing. I know this has been an exceptionally difficult time for all of you. I very much hope that the various things that we've done to try and make that a little bit easier have made a difference. And I know we can't do absolutely everything that people want us to do, and the nature of our support has to evolve. But please be reassured that I'm constantly looking at the situation, trying to find creative and effective ways to support dynamic free enterprise and innovative businesses like yours as we go through this. But I'm confident that with all your energy and creativity and all our country's collective resilience, we'll be able to get through this, emerge stronger on the other side, and look forward to a brighter future. Thank you.